there, friends. So today I'm going to be talking about the book The Color of Magic by Sir Terry Pratchett, and I'm actually going to be doing sort of a 2-video discussion on it. This video will specifically be why I recommend it as a starting point for some people. Part 2 will be why I don't, but that's not what we're talking about now. So, for those of you who don't know, The Color of Magic is book number 1 of Terry Pratchett's Discworld series. Now you may be saying, okay, so it's book number 1 of the series. Why do you need to do an entire video recommending book number 1 of a series? Because it's book number 1, like, where else would I start? But the thing about that is that Discworld is kind of more of a setting than a consistent series. And because of this, there are several different starting points, because there are several different series within it. So The Color of Magic, obviously, is one of these starting points, because it's a starting point for the whole series, but it's also a starting point for what is referred to as the Rincewind series, which is sometimes lumped in with just the Wizard series. So yeah, this is in fact a good starting point, as well as several different books within this. Alright, so The Color of Magic is a book essentially about a cowardly wizard. It's about a wizard named Rincewind, who is kind of a failed wizard. He only knows one spell, and he doesn't know what that spell does because it's an extremely powerful spell that he's afraid to say. So he's kind of useless. And he kind of falls into this whole situation. There's a tourist from a foreign continent who wants to explore his city and wants to learn about the world and everything on this continent. And so Rincewind kind of just gets dragged along for the ride. He's the epitome of a reluctant hero because he is constantly trying to run away from these adventures that he just gets sucked into. And so yeah, that's pretty much the plot of The Color of Magic. It's Rincewind tries to run away and gets pulled into all of these things. Reasons why I recommend this book are, well, number 1, a lot of times people have trouble seeing that this book is labeled number 1 and not starting with it. And that, to me, is a legitimate thing. Like, you don't have to start with this book, no. But if you feel like you really need to start with this book, like if you feel like you cannot start with another book, then that's fine. Start with this book. I don't think it's the best starting point for everyone, but if that's something that you need to do, then that's something you need to do, and that's okay. So yeah, that's, I guess, one reason to start with this, that it's book number 1 of the Discworld series, technically speaking. All right, number 2 is that this book has a lot of good world building in it. I will say that some of it is a little bit sort of retconned, but it has enough good solid world building that does stay consistent throughout the series that I still think that that is an asset to this book. Because of the plot with the tourist named Two Flower kind of dragging Rincewind everywhere, you get to see a lot of the world, and you get to learn about a lot of the world. And I think that's a lot of fun. World building is one of my favorite things in especially fantasy, and this book does a great job at it. You get to explore lots of different countries and learn about them. The next reason is because there are several characters that come along often in Discworld that are introduced in this book, including Death. Yes, Death is an actual character. He is sort of the Reaper in the robe with the scythe, and he shows up in so many Discworld books. I think that it is a wonderful thing to be introduced to him early on, because I think it's nice that even if you decide not to continue with the Rincewind series, you can have this sort of familiar grounding point. Another character that is very consistently there in Discworld is Rincewind. He shows up almost every time the wizards show up. I won't say every single time, but he is often there. If we go to the wizarding school, he makes little cameos sometimes. Occasionally he's just kind of mentioned whenever wizards are present, and he just is a very consistent character in the world. And again, just like with Death, it's just nice to have that familiar thing. Even if you're just jumping into a different series with completely different characters, if you see that name or that character, then it's just a nice little thing to recognize and be like, oh yeah, this is the same world. And then another character that is introduced is Two Flower. Two Flower only really comes around in the Rincewind series, but he also introduces the culture of a completely different continent. And I think that that is important. I guess it goes back into the world building, because it does help you see that Discworld is more than just the bits that get focused on in certain books, if that makes sense. And then last but not least, it's not a character, but it is an important thing, and that is the city of Ankh-Morpork. Ankh-Morpork comes up in so many Discworld novels, even whenever they don't take place in Ankh-Morpork or they don't travel through Ankh-Morpork. Ankh-Morpork is mentioned in almost every series. I think every series at some point or another. And it's just this big metropolis that I think it's supposed to be the oldest city on the disc, and it's just good to get familiar with it early on in reading. And I think that while this book doesn't necessarily spend a lot of time in it, it spends enough time in it that you get the feel for Ankh-Morpork. And I think that that is very important in your starting book. So yes, that is the reasons why I recommend starting with The Color of Magic. Please check out my second video. It should be out soon, discussing reasons why I might not recommend it. Of course, if you want to start with this book, then feel free to, regardless of what I say, what anybody says. And if you don't want to start with it, then you don't have to start here. You can start wherever you want. So I hope that this video was helpful to you, though, and I very much appreciate you watching. I will see you around.